Monkey.
Get your sticky paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Is that a monkey?
Where are the gorillas?
Nice monkey suit.
The help with this chimp, we may have a championship season.
Monkey!
It's like I'm talking to a monkey.
No one wants to be turned into a monkey.
Apes together.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to CineMonkey. My name is Mike DePalma, and this is a monkey movie podcast where we talk all things monkeys in media and sapiens in cinema. And today, I am joined by someone who you may have seen that name before on one of the titles, but it's not the same person. It's his twin brother. I'm joined by Juan Ramon. Hello, Juan.
Hello, hola. Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah. I am excited to have you, and I'm excited to discuss the last in the Caesar Planet of the Apes trilogy. It is May. I like to say this is Planet of the Mapes. That is this little series I'm going on until Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Well, if this is your first time listening, I'll also break down how this show works. What we're going to do is we're going to explain the plot of the movie, full spoilers. So if you haven't watched it, we're going to talk about the entire thing. I'm really sorry. Come back to this at a later date. So then we're gonna discuss it. We're gonna discuss the monkeys in the movie afterwards. We're gonna discuss what happens if we take the monkeys out of the movie, and then we're gonna rate it either monkey see, monkey do, or monkey see, monkey don't. And if we have any fun facts or trivia, we'll pepper them in and we'll try to spice this up. So this movie was directed by Matt Reeves. He's returning from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It has a screenplay by Mark Baumbach and also Matt Reeves. The movie stars Andy Serkis, Woody Harrelson, Steve Zahn, Karen Conville, Toby Kebbell, Amira Miller, and Gabrielle Cavallo. So you good to go, Juan? You ready?
Let's do this.
All right. So this movie opens and we get a nice recap of the previous two movies. So it's kind of a display of words kind of being like, hey, listen, Rise of the Planet of the Apes happened. A flu was made. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes happened. Most of the people died. Koba started a little war. And now we're at the War of the Planet of the Apes. Just a little war. Just a little war. I mean, when you think about it, it's just this one sect of monkeys that we know of so far. It's just this one sect of monkeys, and then there's just this one group of humans that were called at the end of the last movie. There was a military base up north, and this movie opens up after that opening crawl on a group of these military soldiers, and on their helmets you see all these derogatory things towards monkeys like ape killer. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones.
They're mostly just like monkey killer. I think they're not like that clever. They're just straight up I kill monkeys. That's it. That's all I'm here for.
Yeah. They're not like good puns in any way, but it's like we're murderers. We're gonna murder you. We're walking through the woods as they're approaching on Caesar's palace, as my brother called it last week, which is the the encampment for the remaining apes. We see them setting up a shot, and then we get a tap on the shoulder, and we turn around and we see a giant gorilla standing next to one of the soldiers, like, oh, they've been caught. But no, this is a bad monkey. This is an evil ape. This is I believe the ape's name is Red. Yeah, he's a traitor, and he's labeled Donkey. Well, right out the gate, I'll point this out. Now, my first thought was like, oh, this ape is named Donkey Kong. No, his name is Red. There's a couple of apes that are traitors, and you see them amongst this military group, and they are all labeled and kind of, do they scar them? I think they brand them as donkeys on their back. And
they do. I think they spray paint the word donkey on their back, but they brand them with, we'll talk about it a little bit later when they like eventually get to know more about the humans, but they're branded with an alpha omega symbol on their forehead.
Yes.
That tells them who they are. And what was funny was one of the things that I kind of came across that I didn't really connect it at first, because I took it as like a literal donkey, as like, the ape is carrying all their like, okay, cool. So he's kind of like, they're ridiculing them by just having them serve that one thing, but it's kind of a play on Donkey Kong, because they call those that help them and serve them donkeys, and the ones they're killing Kongs, because then they have, I think, a sign that says a good Kong is a dead Kong or something like that. Or they even like try to shoot down one of Caesar's soldiers and refer to them as Kongs.
Yeah. I picked up on that. I think that is one of Caesar's apes is like on a horse, and they have one in like the crosshairs. And they're like, I got a Kong in my sight. So
yeah.
Now Donkey Kong, King Kong, whatever Kong you want to associate it with, it's the Kong monkey, it's all connected.
All
Now they
apes.
never explicitly, it's all apes. It's all apes to me. But yeah, and so they're doing this little sneak attack, and they do take out one of Caesar's boys on a horse. Then they start attacking the base, and then we get this little action sequence at the start of the apes and the humans attacking each other like a war movie. It felt like a very basic a scene out of like a Vietnam film.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's like if you didn't deliver on your war the first couple of minutes, like what are we doing? What are we doing?
and yeah, and like I feel like this movie has a couple different genres, and it starts out as a war movie, I would say. And you have two warring factions fighting over each other, and there's a gruesome battle and everything, and people are blowing up and monkeys are dying. And it also kind of reminded me, and this is of Return of the Jedi, another third movie in a franchise, where the apes, they have some guns, but they don't really, but they're attacking with basically spears, and they're winning like a majority of this battle.
I was thinking that because I'm like, dude, they come in with missile rockets, and you're just kind of wondering like, oh, like these guys are Caesar's probably like done for, and just right over the hill they're just throwing long ass spears that are like taller than them, and the humans are like, no, that'll do it. That'll do it. It was weird because I don't know what kind, this is kind of a weird aside, but they kind of sent all these men to kind of attack in one singular formation instead of flanking, and it's like fish in a barrel, dude. Like no wonder you guys are getting your ass kicked there.
Well, we'll get into it a little bit later. These might not be the smartest soldiers.
True. Very true.
But yeah. Oh, also, I want to mention this movie takes place 2 years after the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I do wonder if you hadn't seen that movie, what would you get out of this? Like, sure, this is a good movie, but like, I feel like you need a lot more context. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to see Rise, but I think you really do need to see Dawn.
Yeah.
To kind of get this movie to its fullest capacity. But the monkeys win. They kill all but like 4 soldiers, and they take them inside the.
And the donkey ends up getting captured too.
True, yes, yeah. The donkey gets captured too, and they take them inside the camp, and then we get our introduction to Caesar in this movie. And he is pissed. You just see this look on his face as he's walking down this corridor of other apes, and they're all bowing down to him, like asking for forgiveness, putting out their hands and everything, like, oh, we're very sorry, we failed you. And he's just like, yeah, fine, pushing them aside. He's like, I have a mission and I gotta talk to these people.
Yeah.
He makes his way to the end of the corridor, and you see the military men lined up as well as the donkey over to the side. Caesar gives a little speech to them, essentially explaining like he's going to give them some mercy. He's going to send them back to the colonel, who is the person who's running this operation. And he's just like, hey, I am going to just request that you give us the woods. That's it. That's all we want. We just want the woods. You guys can have everything else, and we'll leave you alone, and there'll be no more bloodshed and no more anything else. And the humans are like, okay, I guess. And then Caesar puts them on horseback and slaps the horse, and they go riding down the river. But before he gives that speech, he tells this white gorilla named Winter, who is an albino, and he's like, hey, we got to go deal with the donkey, the red, this other gorilla. We have to go deal with him. Put him aside. As Caesar's giving this speech to the military guys and sends them on their way, he turns around and you see blood dripping off of Winter's head, and is like, oh, he attacked me and ran away. And Caesar's not happy about this, but it's like, all right, well, it is what it is. We also get Maurice, the orangutan, comes up to Caesar and is like, well, why did you let them go? Like, they're not going to listen. Or are they going to tell the colonel the message that you have given? And Caesar's like, sending them back is the message. We may be monkeys, but we're not savages,
Yeah. This is where you ask the question, like, is it, like, if you watch War of the Planet of the Apes, like, alone and by itself, like, is it still a great movie? Yeah, yes, it's really well done, but this is just something that trails right off from Dawn, where it's a lot of the problems come from this decision, and we'll see later on, but that follows him through. And I think that it wouldn't have the same impact if you hadn't seen Dawn and see this and be like, oh, he's just really good. But it's like, no, this is part of his character is this conflicted. Like, this is the reason, this is part of the reason why they're here, is because of this sort of move that he does. the sympathy he has for the humans that are like, maybe it's not the best decision for you to send them back out because not everybody is as good as you are.
Yeah, he is the most sympathetic towards humans, except maybe Maurice. Maurice is just kind of like, let's just have some peace. Can we get a little peace in here? We just want to have
Maurice
a
is
little
a
bit of
homeboy, man. I wish I want a hype man like Maurice. I want like a good friend like Maurice, man. He's my favorite character in this.
Maurice has, I would say, probably had the least, like, Maurice does not have a character arc in any of these movies, and that's fine. Maurice has always been the same character for 12 years or however long it's been in the world of Planet of the Apes. Yeah. Maurice is just, like I said, we're chilling, all right? I could be in a cage, I want to be free and everything, but if we could just coexist. I'm gonna follow Caesar. I like Caesar's methods, and also Maurice throughout all of these movies doesn't harm anybody. Maurice is like a pacifist. Maurice you never really see Maurice with a gun. You never see Maurice injure another ape or another human. Maurice is always just to the side, just being like observing, taking it all in.
He really is Caesar's conscience throughout, right from the beginning.
Caesar's Jiminy Cricket.
Exactly. Pretty big Jiminy Cricket. That dude's like twice the size of Caesar, but so lovable. Maurice is an interesting character, and we'll probably talk about it later on because there's several actual like good scenes, visuals where all you see is Maurice's like eyes and face, and Maurice probably has like the least amount of lines from all the other apes that have like come and gone, and that just kind of really, I think it's so impressive how much you like connect with Maurice just by staring, just by looking at what they're like his facial expressions. And every time when I was like eventually seeing these movies when they were coming out, I'm like, if Maurice gets hurt or dies, I'm gonna fucking riot, dude. Like,
like you said, Maurice is a homeboy. Maurice Maurice is just chilling. After the attack on the base and Caesar sends the military boys away, we see two apes on horseback, and it's Rocket and Blue Eyes. Now, if you need a recap, Blue Eyes is Caesar's son, and Rocket is the ape from Rise of the Planet of the Apes that was actually Caesar's enemy, who was bullying Caesar at the start of that film, but then has become Caesar's new like right-hand guy over the course of these movies. I mean, he was pretty close to him in the last movie, but he didn't do much. In this movie, he kind of has a bigger role, and he comes back on horseback with Blue Eyes, and they have a little town council meeting, and they're like, what'd you find out in the wilderness? And they go, hey, listen, we found the desert. We could probably escape and be free if we just head over to the desert, because the humans, they're not going to like the desert. Winter, the white gorilla I was talking about before, is like, hey, we should pack up and leave right now. And everyone's like, well, hold on. We actually have to plan that out. Calm down there. And he's like, no, we need to leave like today. Like, I'm done. And
he's like
all right.
So much. Yeah.
Hold your horses there, buddy. He's just like, oh, sorry, I'll back down. Yeah, they go around and kind of discuss. It's like, okay, we will pack up, but we need to find a safe way out of the woods, because that was just 2 monkeys. This is like 800 monkeys. Like, we need like, they're gonna see us leaving. Yeah. And they're like, okay, yeah. And so they go to bed. They're like, yeah, we'll discuss it in the morning. Don't you worry. It's going to be fine. So Caesar goes to bed in his big rotunda underneath the waterfall that he has. And as he's like laying down, he sees these green lights start to come down on the other side of the waterfall. And he's like, something's up. No. And he gets up and he like goes and he gets his guards, and we meet another gorilla whose name is Luca, my boy. And and Luca is the head of the guards of Caesar's camp. And Caesar's like, something's going on right now. Go get everybody and wake Rocket up too. Why not? Rocket wakes up and they find a soldier has entered the base. They take him out and everything. And then Caesar's like, I gotta get to my family real quick. And so he runs back to his little bedroom. Actually, he hears over the radio of the downed soldier. Voice
they're like, we got King Kong. We got him.
Yeah, we got King Kong, the voice of Woody Harrelson. And Caesar's like, oh, like, I gotta, my family's in trouble. And he books it back to his bedroom, and he sees the bodies of Blue Eyes and Cornelia, his wife, rest in peace, Judy Greer. And then we see a figure from the waterfall, and you see his head turn. He's painted all in camouflage, and there he is in all his glory, his bald glory, Woody Harrelson. And he's the menacing villain of this movie, and he just jumps off the waterfall. And Caesar's like, nope, and runs right after him, and he jumps and he grabs onto his rope that was keeping him up, and he tries to climb up, and they have a little battle on this rope, and Woody Harrelson takes off a knife and cuts that rope, and Caesar falls to the bottom of whatever the lake or the waterfall that he was in.
There's like
the
right
rest of the
before
military gets away. Yeah.
right before then, there's a when Caesar finds, like, he's like, senses something's wrong in the water, he notices like green lasers are coming in through the waterfall, and then he kind of puts his hand out where the water's kind of running and notices the rope. Like, if you hear the music cue, I kind of noticed this. It's not exact, but it's really falls heavily on, or it sounds very, very similar to the original Planet of the Apes score when the humans first entered the planet, quote unquote, and they're like discovering everything. You kind of hear the same. I don't want to say, I don't know so much about like chords and all this stuff, but you hear kind of like the same tone of that original score, and it's very interesting because it comes in when humans kind of start infiltrating, or at least peering into wherever the apes are at. And I thought that was really, really cool. And not only does it look great when you see all of that, but it's really cool because this is where it starts tying in a lot, kind of bookending the prequel series to lead on into the first movie. Obviously, this is before Kingdom got announced, but we're going to be seeing a lot of this, a lot of references to it. And I think it's just really, really cool because there's so much care into it. And you could kind of tell, especially when you kind of get to the rest of the characters. But
yeah, no, I mean, let's talk about this now. Let's talk about Michael Giacchino. Now, he did the scores for Dawn and War, and both are. And I was expecting, because I didn't talk about this last week when I talked about Dawn, but Dawn has like great music behind it. Like, you feel so, like, it's so tense, but it's also like a bit light as well. This movie, the music is also amazing, but it's a completely different score from the previous movie. There's no repeated melodies from that one. Like, oh, remember that? Let's call back to that score. No, it's all new. It's all different, and it's just so, what's the word I'm looking for? Sad.
It's very heartbreaking. Yes, there's one score when they're like, eventually, I guess we'll go into the story a little bit later, but when Caesar and his small crew, they kind of go into the beach and they're like riding on horses, it's a kind of like a lighter tone. But there's one particular piece, I wish I could pull up the title of the track, but when they first see the human they encounter in that abandoned like kind of like neighborhood, is this like just piano piece that plays throughout when she shows up, where there's like a moment of sympathy that's so heartbreaking, and it's so simple. Michael Giacchino really, just obviously based on the conversation with Matt Reeves and everybody else involved, but it's really smart of them to be like, we're going to do something completely just unique to the movie. You're right, we're not going to go ahead and bring back other themes or motifs from the other movies, just because I think it adds a whole different immersiveness. I guess it makes you just more invested into that movie and not worried about anything else that came after or before.
Yeah. I just want to. Michael Giacchino is kind of famous for doing this, where the names of his songs and the melodies of his movie, they kind of are joking in a particular way. Like, I just pulled up the names of the songs from this movie. Like, one of them is called "Don't Luca Now."
Yeah, they're all
Coba
fun.
Dependent.
He's like the ultimate dad composer.
Yeah. Planet of the Escapes. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, there's one that's called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I'm like, damn it.
Damn it. Well, just because he writes good music, we'll let him get away with it.
Yeah. He does this in most of the movies he writes music for, where he's like, no one's looking at this. I can name this whatever I want. Anyway, back to the plot of the movie. Caesar's family is killed, except for his youngest son Cornelius, and yeah, a really bummer of a note to jump back to. And we also find out that Winter can't be found, the white gorilla. They're like, okay, well, he's probably dead or a traitor. Caesar decides, okay, you know what? We gotta leave right now, because they know our base. They know where we are. They could come back at any moment and just exterminate the rest of us. So they all go down to the beach. Caesar places Cornelius in the care of Lake, who was the semi-girlfriend, potential, probably girlfriend, maybe wife of Blue Eyes.
Yeah, they seem really close at the beginning. Very, very short-lived. That sucks.
Yeah. Well, Caesar's like, hey, you loved my son. Can you watch my other one? Bye. Caesar's like, I gotta go. And everyone's like, no, you gotta come with us, Caesar. You're our leader. And he goes, no, I'm gonna go murder Woody Harrelson. Y'all head out. I'm gonna go do my own thing. I'll catch up with you after I murder Woody Harrelson. And they're all like, we don't love that, but okay. And he's like, all right, bye.
He kind of paints it as like, he just kind of paints it like, I mean, the saddest part, he kind of immediately tells him like, I have the same hate like Koba. So like, this is something that you can't really stop me at this point. This is bad for everybody, but it is kind of very blunt. I think what was really funny is that, well, not necessarily funny, but that he just kind of is willing to accept like, yeah, man, I'm not in a good place right now. I'm gonna do something super and I'll see you guys later. Don't follow me because you don't want to see this.
Yeah.
He's so self-aware about it. He's like, I know I'm gonna do something. I know it's wrong, but deuces.
I found this scene to be really interesting because this is the point where he's kind of snapped. Because all up until this point, he's shown mercy towards humans, even the worst of them. He's never really held too much of a grudge. He's always felt like we can do it. I can bring peace. I could bring peace to the valley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his family's murdered, and he's like, that's his last straw. He goes, nope, I'm gonna go kill a human now. I really gotta kill this human. He's just the worst. He's just, and all the other apes are like, should we also kill humans? And he was like, no, probably not. But like,
do
it to defend yourself.
Do as I'm gonna say, not as I monkey do.
Exactly. And so he's just like, I'm out. And he takes the horse and he starts riding in the opposite direction of where the apes are. And he's followed by his three boys. His three boys. He's got Luca, Rocket, and Maurice. I'll follow them. And he's like, no, don't come with me. And they're like, we're going to come with you because you're probably going to die on your own. And he's like, all right, boys, saddle up. And now we're on a Western adventure.
Right.
Well, Rocket, he's like, well, I've seen a fire at this place, so I think I know where he is. They ride towards where the fire is. And then it's that scene you were talking about where they're riding on horseback. It's a beautiful shot, too, where they're riding on horseback. You get the silhouette of the sun and everything. And I read that the director, Matt Reeves, he was like, I really wanted it to be raining in that scene to like contrast like the dark journey they're about to go on, but then the weather wouldn't allow for it, and he was just like, actually, this is better. The behind the scenes too, those aren't CGI. Those horses, those are real horses that the motion capture artists are actually on horseback in their motion capture suit as they're riding on horses, which is just fascinating to me.
But I think what was really interesting was, obviously they try to make it as accurate as possible. I think like to scale, to have an ape ride a horse. So they said that humans are obviously taller than apes. So they basically like painted, just kind of covered the actor's legs with extra like horse prosthetic to make it look like it has more horse body, so that they would hide the feet, the legs, to make them look shorter. And I'm like, I want to see the actual behind the scenes of that, because that must have looked like super clunky, super like kind of weird, but it looks very seamless. You like the horses are pretty much real, and eventually when the actors are turned into like their ape selves, like it looks so seamless.
Well, I mean, in the first movie, they ran into the problem of like Andy Serkis is actually really tall and not at all the size of Caesar. So they would have to like, and I don't know if they probably did this in this movie as well, where they would film every scene 3 times. Although maybe not when it's just the monkeys, but when they were acting against humans, they would film one scene with Andy Serkis and then one scene blank and then another scene with a smaller actor. So they take Andy Serkis's performance capture and then they slide it onto to the smaller actor to be like, and that's the size Caesar should be, which is something I want to mention as well, is that you kind of don't get it in Dawn so much, because while there are a lot of different actors and scenes at play there, the scale of like these monkeys I think is really well, because like you said, like, I mean, Caesar is a chimp. He's not going to be 6 feet tall. So they do have to shrink them. And there's a scene literally right after this one when they arrive at that camp with the fire, where Caesar gets off the horse and you see that he's actually kind of short compared like to the horse and to like the surroundings around him. It's like, oh yeah, he is a monkey. They've been in their own little village. They've built the things to scale for them. But when the humans are involved and you get into the real world again, you get the sense of scale again that, yeah, okay, they kind of are, they look subservient because they are smaller.
Right. I will say also one of the size issues that, I mean, I'm not going to do the actual science or the math behind it, there is in that. But I'm like telling myself the entire time I'm established in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but this one mostly because like Luca is a prominent character for a chunk of the movie, and he's on the horse. I'm just wondering, like, I don't think a horse would be able to last that long with like
The gorilla?
on him. And there's even a point where I think he I forgot who he picks up, but Luca grabs, or might have been another gorilla who's also on horseback, picks up another ape, and you're just like, dude, that's like even triple the amount of weight on this horse. Like, how the hell is possible? It's even carrying like all their equipment. But that's the only part that to me, I'm like, I'm not sure if that's doable, but I mean, we've already come this far, whatever.
That's where you draw the line on the logic of these movies.
Not the fact that they talk or that they're wearing clothes. It's just horse and gorilla.
Gorilla can't ride horse. Gorilla too heavy. So they get to this camp. There's a fire going and everything, and they come across a human who's just around, and he's carrying some wood. Rocket holds a gun to him, and he's like, "Oh, all right, calm down now. Let me just put this wood down." And he pulls a gun from his back, and Caesar, who's in a shed, just pops him with a shotgun. And he dies, and they're like, "Well, oops."
That's not the first human. Remind me, it's not the first human he's killed, right? Is there someone else he's killed before?
That actually might be the first human he kills on purpose.
Yeah.
He's transitioned into, I don't care. Whoever stands in my way, I am going to get my revenge on the man who killed my family. A classic revenge tale.
There's that Western for him.
Yeah. And he kind of doesn't even care that he killed this guy either. Mm-hmm. He's just like, well, he pulled a gun. So everything is like, all right, well, this was a bust. I mean, and they actually see this little girl come out of, does she come out of the cabin?
No, so they hear stuff falling from the cabin and they go like investigate. And she ends up like, I guess they find her in her room, like in one of the beds.
Yeah. And they find this little girl at the camp, and they decide that, well, she can't speak. And they're like, that's weird, but okay. And Maurice takes a liking to her, and Caesar's like, we're going to leave her. I can't. And Maurice is like, no, she's going to die. She's like 8.
Maurice is basically like, he's like, we can't take her. Like, this is like, I don't want to. That's risky. And Maurice is like, I know that, but I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna let her die. And just, like, there you go, Maurice being a.
I'll keep her. Yeah. You don't gotta feed her. You don't gotta walk her. It's gonna be my little girl. It's fine.
Well, it's like one of the first interesting things you notice about her when they find her is that she's like bleeding from her nose. She has like dry blood on her nose, and you know something's wrong, and why she can't speak. But we'll go into that a little later.
This little girl joins the party. You got your ragtag crew and a little girl. A gruffed old man is transporting a little girl across a particular land.
Basically, True Grit
we've ever seen. It's True Grit. It's True Grit with The Last of Us. It's
what a pitch,
Logan. So it's Logan, but with monkeys. They continue on their journey and they travel, and turns out this girl can speak a little sign language, and she signs to Caesar that she's thirsty, or Maurice has been teaching her sign language in some capacity, and Caesar's like, all right, she's starting to grow on me a little bit. And they come across, they wind up finding on the beach one of the bases for the military group, and so they do a covert secret mission, and they happen to find in the base Winter, the gorilla, which now has donkey written on his back. He's been a naughty ape. He ratted out Caesar. So they kind of sneak up on him in like a mess tent as he's like cleaning some dishes. They're like, why did you betray us? And he was like, I'm just very scared, and I'm a coward, and I'm very sorry. Please forgive me, Caesar. And Caesar's like, my family died. And he was like, didn't mean for that to happen. Very sorry. And then you see some like guards, like the silhouettes of some guards like outside, and Caesar and the all 3 or 4 of them kind of like tackle like Winter, and they're like, shut the hell up. Like, don't say anything. Winter just gives up all the information so quickly. And
that's one thing that I mean, I get that he's scared. It really just shows just how much of a coward he is, but he just fell so easily to give all that information. I'm like, we also are running on a lot of time to kind of establish why this happened. So sure, screenplay rules, but at the same time, it's like, I think it really adds more to just how much Winter was just ready to like his pants throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, Winter is the biggest coward of this franchise, I would say. Yeah, just instantly apologize to the Caesar, say, sorry, I got you killed. The other gorilla, he told me that, like, hey, if I run away, the colonel will show me mercy. He won't kill me. I just have to tell him like where you sleep, And I did. Caesar's not having this, and he learns through Winter that there's a group of humans coming up from the north that are going to essentially wipe out the rest of the apes. Caesar's like, well, is the colonel there? And they're like, maybe, perhaps, probably. And so Caesar goes, I must go north now. When the guards start coming and Winter's about to like rat on them and like scream, they like hold Winter down. And I think they kill Winter.
He does, yeah. Caesar kills him. I was like looking at it, like kind of rewind it a little bit because I'm like, did he get him like a chokehold or something? No, he like just put his hand over his mouth and just suffocated the shit out of him. Which
yeah. And I wouldn't say poor ape, but like I was like, well, that and Caesar ape count 2, Koba, and now Winter. And that guy that he just shot with a shotgun.
Casualties
Yeah,
of war.
it's casualties of war. And so they kind of make their way up north some more, and they continue on their way following the convoy. And they're like, if we just follow them, they'll just take us right to the wherever they're going. And they make their way to a little kind of section, this kind of like fire station, I guess.
Yeah.
And they climb up it. They're going up, and they're just kind of scoping out, trying to see where the convoy is going next. And then they look down, and the little girl is alone on a horse. And there's this hooded figure who is like investigating the horse, and he sees that there's like a gun and everything. And then I believe Maurice like spots him and starts screaming. The hooded figure hops onto the horse and starts running away, stealing the stuff. This is that scene you were talking about. The monkeys jump down, they hop on horseback, like, we're gonna chase after this guy. We gotta get our stuff back. And so there's a fun little chase sequence, and the figure is firing the shotgun, trying to get them off their trail and everything. And they chase him down, and they chase him into I think the building, right? The snow lodge.
Yeah, it's a building filled with like a bunch of trinkets. It's like almost, it has like a spiral staircase. I don't know if it was like a lighthouse or something.
I think it's the ski resort. I think they're hanging out in a ski resort. They chase him into a ski resort, and they make their way to a fireplace. They hear some rustling, and the gun gets thrown back at them, and then their binoculars get thrown back at them, and all their stuff slowly gets back at them. And then out steps another ape. This ape is played by Steve Zahn, and he introduces himself as Bad Ape. And he has full vocabulary, which is not like Caesar's group, which has limited vocabulary. They've been around for a little while, and he's just so excited to have new friends. He's like, I'm so sorry, but hey, come stay with me in my snow cabin. We're gonna have a great time. He kind of runs around and he feeds them. He's like, I got food for you guys. Like, I haven't seen other apes in forever. And they kind of ask him like, what's going on? He was like, well, I used to live at a zoo, and all of the apes at the zoo got really smart, and then the humans killed all the apes, and they kept calling me Bad Ape, so I'm Bad Ape. And
I think it's credit to Steve Zahn for this character. He is, when I first saw it, like trailers for it, you kind of expect him to be kind of like an annoying character, but he's like got so much heart, so innocent, but he's like one of the MVPs of this movie.
Yeah, and something that the Dawn didn't have, he's the comic relief of this movie. There's no funny character in Dawn.
Yeah.
He's funny, and he's like, but he is innocent, and he isn't like, when I first saw it, I agree with you. I was like, oh, Steve Zahn, like daddy daycare guy, like really like all right. I mean, Mr. Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, like, okay, I guess, but he crushes it in this role, and I think that just speaks to, one, he is a good actor, and two, like the direction that Matt Reeves gives. Like, there's the scene where he's running through his little lodge, and he's like looking for the food and everything, and he slips and falls, and apparently that was just like a mistake. Like, Steve Zahn just like kind of did that just because he's like, that could be kind of funny, and Matt Reeves was like, no, we'll keep it in. Like, and that's like the magic of motion capture. They were like, if this was just a regular CGI movie, like everything is methodically planned out. We're like an animated film. Every motion, every movement, it's methodically planned out, and you don't get those moments of kind of improvisation or like physicality. There's that little piece of physical comedy that's added through Bad Ape's performance. And while they're having the conversation about like his backstory and everything, the little girl keeps picking up this little trinket off the ground. And I love this. He like kept running over to her and be like, stop it. And then he would go back and like tell the rest of his story. And then she would pick it up and he's like, stop. And he keeps like going back and forth. And it's just such like a subtle little thing where he's just like, put that down. All right, now back to what I was talking. Stop all right, keep going. Like,
The thing with this character too is, this is kind of a response to the question that people will talk about later on, or like, because this leading up to the original movie and everything else that comes after it, I guess, story wise. But the idea of like, okay, so Caesar's group is relatively, it's not like a planet full of apes yet. So how is everybody like? There's got to be other apes that are different, or probably also will evolve like Caesar. I think Bad Ape comes from the Sierra Nevada like zoo. It's like a small, apparently like an actual zoo that just closed down in March. The thing with Steve Zahn's character, Steve Zahn, I saw an interview not too long ago where he was kind of like called in to do the role, and he completely underestimated how to do this. He just thought, I'm just gonna go ahead and walk around and do like chip noises and whatnot. But he like had to go almost full method, where he just had to know how to like move his mouth and like walk around. I forgot the actor who plays Rocket was actually the main guy who coached.
Yeah,
Terry
Notary, I think is his name. Yeah, he's King Ape.
he is King Ape, and even though his role's small, but like he taught all the newcomers kind of how to be ape. And apparently he even, I mean, there's also like baby chimps or like children apes in this, but he also taught, like, I think a lot of the motion capture for the child chimps, they were actually children of some of the actors who played some of the main characters. Like Terry Notary's kids actually played these baby chimps and taught them how to do it. So for like Steve Zahn to just completely end up doing this role in such a good way, I think is super impressive. But his character is also just generally very important, because this helps add to the idea that it is a planet of apes that are evolving and not necessarily under Caesar's influence. But it's nice to know that his name is Bad Ape and stuff like that. But he's such so innocent. He almost says it so playfully. I'm like, I'm Bad Ape.
He's like, Bad Ape. Yep, that's me. His character was written in specifically during the press tour of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, because a particular journalist was like, so like, is it just Caesar's group that are smart? And they were like, good point. Like you were saying, they're like, oh, we do have to make a planet of apes, don't we? So the flu that spread all around the world and killed pretty much all of the humans, it has enhanced the abilities of the apes worldwide as well. And they were like, it's interesting, because it's like, after this particular movie, because we don't meet any other outside apes besides Caesar's group and Bad Ape. It's like, well, whoever picks up the franchise, wherever the franchise goes after this, we have this opportunity to be like, okay, so Caesar was the leader for this group of monkeys. What happens when a group of monkeys or apes doesn't have the leadership and sympathy that Caesar had? Right. Now, Bad Ape's group was pretty much all massacred and killed, and he is this tragic character because he's the last of his kind, but he is also the first semblance of branching over into humanity, because he was wearing a coat and he sees that the little girl, she needs it more than he does, so he gives that to her, and he has sympathy as well. And he finds another coat later, so he wears like this little blue jacket and like a little beanie the rest of the movie.
Yeah, he just comes out like
I'm cold. He's smarter than he kind of gives off. And he's also like, he's scared as well, because Caesar, he's asking like, what are you guys doing? Like, what and Caesar's like, I'm gonna go get revenge on the man who killed my family. And he's like, oh, and he's like, who killed your family? And it's like, oh, a bad military guy. Like, and he's like, oh, I do know where that camp is, but I will not take you. And then after talking with Caesar for a while, he's like, okay, I'll take you, because he sympathizes with Caesar for losing a child, because he lost his child as well. He's like, all right, well, I'll show you where the base is. So he winds up finding his blue little jacket, like I mentioned, and they get on horseback and they ride over to the mountain base of where the military
Alpha. I think the group is like just generally Alpha Omega.
Alpha Omega, yeah, the Alpha Omega.
Just before then, I think one of the most important parts, so we just kind of skipped over really fast, was the girl, the thing that she was picking up that like Bad Ape was like, don't touch that. Eventually, he's like, here, you can keep it. And it's the metal plaque for the Chevy Nova.
Oh, and yes.
That becomes like obviously a tie into the original movie. There's a human love interest who Charlton Heston's character falls in love with. He calls her Nova, and then they just kind of give her this plaque. So it's a direct tie into it. But I always find it funny. It's not the first movie that's used the Chevy Nova for like a reference of some sort. And I think it's funny how much we've just gone to use it, because the reason that car doesn't exist within our world is because it failed so poorly in Mexico, because it's a little fact, but that it didn't do so well in Mexico because when they translated it, basically translated to Chevy does not run, Chevy does not go. And I think it's so funny just because it's like, I don't know, like at the end of the world, you see this plaque and it's one of the most influential things for this movie, but realizing this car failed miserably. I don't know. It's just a little thing that I like seeing. And this is not the first movie that's putting that back up, but I like that tie-in. It's in the smart way to reference the first movie.
Yeah, I think this franchise, this rebooted trilogy, does a lot of fan servicey things without beating you over the head with it. Like the worst offender I would probably say is Rise, and like that has like "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape," and
Tom
it's a
Felton, I think,
madhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Felton says all those lines from the movie, and you see the astronauts in space. They're like, oh, they went missing. One of the characters is watching a Charlton Heston movie. It's like, oh yeah, here's all the Planet of the Apes stuff, but it's all done in service of the story. I would say it's not like, it doesn't feel like it was tacked on. It feels like it was naturally like, oh, this is a nice thing we could put in there, and like this character of Nova was clearly written in as an homage, and like even like naming the characters like Blue Eyes and Bright Eyes and Caesar, like it's all homages to the original trilogy, not trilogy, five
the original
films.
film.
The original movies. You get these nice little nods, like you're saying, and yes, now we have Nova, the little girl. She doesn't get fully named that until a little bit later, but she carries that little trinket around with her. So the apes, they get on horseback and they travel to the Alpha Omega base. They're doing a little scouting mission. Caesar and Luca, they're like, we're gonna go a little bit closer, and they go down and they're looking through the binoculars and anything, and they see apes tied up on these kind of X's, kind of as like keep out symbols, being like, no, look what happens when apes get close to us, like we'll string them up. Caesar's like confused by this, and while he's like looking around, a guard finds them, and Luca and the guard, they get into a scuffle, and the guard shoots him, but they wind up killing the guard. Luca is joined by Rocket and Maurice and Bad Ape, and they're all gathering around, and Luca has a heartfelt goodbye, and he's like, I'm glad I was able to save you this time, Caesar, because Luca was his guard. I didn't realize this in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and he wasn't able to block Koba shooting him. So this is
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Damn.
And so he's like, I'm able to repay you finally for my failure. This causes Maurice to be like, okay, we should be done. Let's go back. Like listen, we just lost Luca. And then Rocket's like, but he just gave his life. Like, we have to complete the mission. And Caesar's like, I'm still gonna go kill the guy. Thank you, but I appreciate what Luca has done. I need to avenge him and my family. And so he starts to head down towards the front entrance of the gates, and he
right before he says that, Maurice basically touches a huge nerve on him when he tells him, you're starting to sound like Koba, and like that really pisses him off, and he's all like, I'll go alone, you guys go away. He's like, you guys shouldn't be here. Like that gets him so mad, and he ends up going alone. I do want to go back really fast because there's another point that will be brought up later on. Before they get to the encampment, they kind of reach the bottom of the I guess the mountain, like right at the cusp of it, and they hear gunshots, and then they're all like, what are they shooting at? They don't know. So when they go investigate, they find there are 3 soldiers that are shot on the ground.
I did forget about this.
They're shot on the ground, and one of them is apparently alive. So when they're like removing the mask to see who basically got shot, one of them basically just kind of wakes up. He's not dead yet, and they find that he also can't speak. There's like blood coming out of his nose, in the same way that they found the girl Nova. Eventually they'll name her Nova, but the girl can't speak as well. So they're wondering, like, he also can't speak. There's something weird about that. Why did they shoot them? And so that becomes a question. I guess we'll explain later, but that's something that happens right before then that becomes a point of interest for Caesar and everybody else.
Yeah, that they're like, that's weird that this general is A, shooting his own men, and B, they can't speak. Yeah. Interesting. Back to the future. He goes forward. I am Koba now. Oh, also, I should mention, let's go back in time again. In between journeys, they do stop and take breaks every once in a while, and they have like little conversations. And Caesar during this time is being haunted by the ghost of Koba, and Koba is just like around and like in his thoughts, and he's like, you're a failure, by the way. Remember when you killed me? That sucked. I hated that. Yeah. You're a hypocrite. And Caesar's like, like shaking it off and everything. Like, I don't like this. I don't like seeing this. He approaches the apes that are tied up, and he sees that they kind of have the markings, the camouflage that his clan puts on, and he, I guess, recognizes some of these apes, and he goes up to them. He's like, what happened? And they're like, hey, we were captured like almost as soon as you left us, and we were taken here. Caesar's like, well, what's going on? Like, he's like, oh, well, the colonel is using us for labor, essentially. And Caesar's like, what kind of labor? And the ape, I think, dies. And then Caesar, I believe, is captured at this point.
Yeah, the red donkey shows up and knocks him out.
Yeah, and they take him inside, and well, he's walked through, I believe, and you see over on the left, you see all of the adult apes, men and women, all colored over together, and then on the right, you see all the children apes, and you see Cornelius, and Cornelius is screaming out to his father, like, hey father, like, save me, me, and just kind of screaming father and father over again. And you just see this hurt and just like, oh geez, I failed so poorly. Like I've screwed up really bad here, as Caesar has kind of marched through the center of the Alpha Omega base, and he's taken to the Colonel, Woody Harrelson, and Woody Harrelson kind of gives this little speech, and he's like talking about like Napoleon, and I'm trying to remember the other history generals.
Big historical figures. Napoleon was the only one that also my history sucks.
Yeah, he like names a bunch of like historical generals and like leaders who have come face to face and I guess had meetings, and he was like, it's in us, like me and you, like we're next line in this history. And then he's like, oh yeah, you're a monkey, you definitely don't know any of those people, you don't read. Like I kind of thought that was a little funny. It was like, oh yeah, like Caesar wouldn't know, like unless James Franco taught him about Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars and like US history and world history in general, which he probably wouldn't have. Like, yeah. So Woody Harrelson's just talking to himself at this point. He's like, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, hi. And they have a chat and they have a conversation, and Woody Harrelson goes on about like how he is actually a good leader to his community. And Caesar's like, you kill your own men. And he was like, let me tell you a little story. My son was in this war and he went looking for you guys. And then he started to not speak. And then the guy who was looking after him started to not speak. And then the medic had a theory that the flu that has killed all of the world has mutated and started to change us into more primitive beings, and it makes us lose our motor functions and can't speak anymore, and kind of reverting back in human evolution. And he was like, and I had a really hard time to decide, and I took a gun and I shot my own son, and I expected all of my men to do the exact same thing. Turns out that's not true, and they didn't all want to kill their friends and family and everything. He's like, but I lead by example, so I killed all those men who betrayed me, and I have ordered that anyone who ever gets sick will get shot. And there is there's people coming up from the north for sure, and they're mad at me.
They're not fans.
Yeah, they're not fans of the fact that I'm shooting my own men. And they're like, yeah, we probably could solve this and use scientists to fix this. And he was like, no, I'm saving the human race. I know what is right. I must kill, and if they want to relieve me of my duty, they must kill me themselves. And so he's like, that's what I'm using your apes for, to build a wall, to keep out this other military group that's coming down to relieve me of my duty. And he demands that Caesar's people work, and Caesar's like, you must feed them, give them food and water. And he's like, nah, I'm good. And then Caesar talks about mercy, and he was like, you came here to kill me, so like what mercy is that? And I think that's like a really good point. It's like, yeah, like Caesar, like you weren't really going to show this guy mercy, and fair enough, he's a bad person.
Yeah,
he is the one. There's no human protagonist in this film like in the other two movies. The humans have a point of view. At this point in time, we're supposed to fully side with the apes, and there's no like good guy, there's only bad guy.
Yeah. I think there's one thing that happened that like when we start revealing this information, Caesar kind of really stands his ground and shows him how smart he is and how aware he is, because he like underestimates him. And at that point, you kind of just wondering like he might as well just kill him just because he thinks he's like not as smart or not as worthy enough to live anymore. But when he's like sees that he has this map with bullets and Jack is finding everything, he kind of puts two and two together, and he like Caesar tells him straight up, he's like, you killed those men because like they're sick. He like really puts up everything against him. And I think that's one of the reasons why he doesn't end up just randomly shooting him, even though his character's capable of doing that, because he's like, you obviously not only serve me, but it just I think it impresses him a lot more to keep him alive than to just get rid of him.
Yeah, I think he finds him fascinating because like and there's several moments after this where he has the opportunity to just kill him and kill all of the apes, but I think there's a part of him that kind of admires Caesar and kind of like is like, this ape is so fascinating to me. Let's see what he does. Let's see where he like, I'm gonna starve him and make sure he's weak and like he can't hurt anybody. Yeah, let's see what he does. And so that's what he does. He puts Caesar up on an X, and he refuses to feed him and give him water. He makes him work in the chain gang as they're passing things down. And Caesar, one of the orangutans makes a mistake and destroys a part of the wall, and the gorilla starts whipping him, and it's like, yep, this is an allegory for something.
some book, some like new book that people are like fans of, called the Bible.
Yeah, no. This is when this movie transitioned to a different movie. It was a war movie, then it was a Western for a little bit, and now it's a prison movie, but also a holy movie. I'll just say it. There's a lot of symbolism here to Christianity and just the Bible in general. Now, is Caesar Monkey Jesus? Who's to say? They sure paint him that way. Is he also Monkey Moses? Also paints him that way.
Surprised he didn't just say, "Let my people go," like immediately. But...
yeah. Just a lot of. After this point, it's just like a lot of. You're seeing monkeys getting whipped and beat. Caesar takes the I would say bullet, but he takes the whipping for the orangutan who screwed up, and Woody Harrelson just kills that orangutan anyway. And he's like, "Hey, get back to work." And Caesar's like, "Feed my people, please, and otherwise we will all die." And he was like, "I will kill you on the count of 5 if you don't tell your people to get back to work." And Lake, the love interest for Blue Eyes, starts to convinces everybody, "Hey, let's get back to work so Caesar doesn't die because we still need him as our leader." Later that night, they start feeding them and giving them food and everything, but Caesar is put up on his X cross and is beaten some more by Red the gorilla, and he's given cold water that is just like to drown him essentially. Like it's not he's not fed in any capacity. Meanwhile,
just really fast. There's because when he gets doused with cold water, it's just a testament to mocap and how much they still keep their reactions. Andy Serkis actually was doused with really cold water. It wasn't warm enough for him. They hadn't warmed it up enough, so then when he doused it, like that was his general reaction, and he fought really hard to keep that as the take when they're all like, "No, like we obviously that wasn't what we wanted." But I thought that was really, really cool, and the emotion still shows up at the end result, regardless of it being a full ape skin, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we could even talk about some motion capture some more here. Most of this movie, the back hour, takes place in this military base, the Alpha Omega military base, and there's snow everywhere, and so they filmed really in the snow. Like it's not a soundstage; they're on location shooting it. So for the motion capture suits, they had to wear wetsuits underneath their motion capture pajama gray things. If you've ever seen them before, they're like these silly little gray suits that are probably like not exactly the most insulating, so they wouldn't freeze while they're doing all these stunts and stuff, and they're pretending to be these apes. They had to wear like scuba gear underneath it, which I found kind of interesting that they had to like kind of adapt it in such a way.
That's where Steve Zahn was like, "I thought I was just going to look at a green ball and be in a room the entire time." He's like, "Nope, I was absolutely wrong on that."
So meanwhile, while Caesar and the gang are getting tortured, we cut back to Bad Ape and Maurice and Rocket, yeah, and they're planning a prison break. Bad Ape is like, "I'm not going in, I can't do it," and he's just kind of being a little baby about stuff. And he falls through like the ice, and they discover a secret tunnel underneath the facility. And so Maurice and Nova, they go with Bad Ape, and they decide that they're going to start clearing and figuring out a way to get Caesar out. Rocket gets captured, and he goes in and he kind of talks to, he signs to Caesar. He's like, "Hey, we're going to get everybody out of here. We're going to come up with a plan." Before this whole prison break sequence starts, Nova actually walks into the enclosure, and she gives Caesar some food, and she gives Caesar some water, and she gives Caesar a little doll that she's been carrying around with her this entire movie. It's just like a little comforting thing, and she gives it to him because he's so weak and he is starving and he's not doing great. And the next morning they find out that Caesar's still alive, the day after he was beaten by the gorilla. Woody Harrelson's like, "If he's still alive in the morning, we'll put him back to work," but he needed to suffer for the night, and he was in his own little cage. He was also seeing like flashes of Koba again during this time, and he's like, Koba's like, hey buddy, kill yourself. like join me in death. You're a bad ape, actually. Caesar is freaked out by this, of course, because he's hallucinating because he's so weak and everything. And then Woody Harrelson opens the cage in the morning, and Caesar is still alive because somehow he's been snuck food. And we just kind of pan down and we see the little doll that's left in the cage, and Woody Harrelson kind of looks at it. Back to the prison break. It reminded me of like Ocean's 11, where it's like they're doing the plan. They're hanging out. You see them like doing their normal chores and moving the rocks and everything. Meanwhile, they're like communicating to each other from afar. Rocket's doing some sign language to Caesar, who does some sign language to Maurice, who's like, and then Maurice is like, "All right, Bad Ape, go clear the tunnel." And so they're clearing the tunnel, trying to find spots underneath both sections, the adult section and the children's section of the prison, so that way they can just make a hole, dip out, and they can leave in the middle of the night when nobody's watching.
Right.
So while they're clearing the hole, Nova, she is like excited to be helping out and be doing something, and she's like, "Am I Ape?" And Maurice is like, "No, you're Nova."
Technically, no. Technically, Nova.
You see this look of like, geez, I didn't want to have this conversation. Like, all right. And so Maurice.
Little fun fact
explains-
about that one. Obviously the actress who plays Maurice has her dialogue kind of like pitched in a certain way so it would match her character, but that's the only piece of dialogue that actually used a altered recording of Charlton Heston saying his love interest when he calls her Nova in the original movie. They use his recording when he says Nova to add to Maurice when he gives it to the little girl.
That's really cool. It's
really not. It's not like, it's interesting because like you would never really notice. Obviously, it's not like prominent, but it's just, again, just the level of care that goes into it and those details that are like, yeah, they thought about pretty much every single thing that happens in this movie with
That's
care.
like in episode 7 of Star Wars where they have Alec Guinness and Ian McGregor like merge their voices together to be like, Ray.
Just a little like less than 1 second snippet, just here added to the sound mix.
So let's get this thing. We'll cut some words off and we'll make them say something. AI, baby. Rest in peace to the rest of us. After Nova is named by Maurice, some water starts flooding into the tunnel that they were clearing, and they close off the section of the tunnel that would have been underneath the children's section of the prison. And so they're like, well, crap. What are we gonna do here? But they still have a way into the adult section. So they communicate to Rocket, who's in the adult section, who communicates to Caesar, hey, we're gonna get the kids out, but we can't. We got to take them out above ground. Essentially, we have to get them over to this little hole here. This is one of my favorite sequences in this movie. Is it because they act most monkey in it? Who knows? But it's the middle of the night. There's a guard patrolling on the prison like catwalks above. Some poop gets thrown at him, and he is furious, as you would. But it's the first time we mentioned poop on the podcast. But monkeys are known to do this, to throw poop at each other and people.
Finally, they do something ape-realistic.
We finally get monkey. We get ape action. And so he throws poop. There's poop thrown at him, and he's pissed. And so he comes down and he's with his gun and everything. And he's like, who threw the poop? And none of the monkeys are looking. And then you see Rocket, and he's standing up. He's got he throws poop at him again. And he was like, I'm gonna kill you. I swear to God. And then you just see Rocket, like he's got like another pile of poop in his hand. He's like throwing it up and down like a baseball. He's like, come on. And the guard makes his way over to Rocket, and they just pull him down into the hole, and they beat him up. I guess this is the one thing Maurice does. Yeah. Maurice does this. Maurice pulls him down into the hole, beats him up, and then he throws up the guard's gun and keys. And then I guess Rocket goes out, or throws the keys to Caesar, who unlocks himself, who at this point in time is in his own little cage.
When Rocket throws the poop to the guard, when they square off, this is back to Michael Giacchino, you hear a horn in the score that he actually used. I think it's like a goat horn or something like that, or a bullhorn, eventually turned into an instrument, but it's one of the original horns that they use for the original movie for when the apes are corralling the humans and they have a horn to signal. They use one of the original horns, and for that cue, like you'll see it when they square off and they stare down at each other, you'll hear that horn in the score.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Again, all these references, but another one of my favorites. I think this whole sequence is probably my favorite sequence in this movie.
Yes.
After they throw the poop and everything, and they toss the keys to Caesar, and Caesar breaks into the children's cage, and he reunites with Cornelius. How are they going to possibly get across to the hole? Well, they're gonna do what monkeys do, and they climb. There's like this there's like this wire that's like over the two enclosures, and you just see them, all of these little monkeys, and then Caesar just kind of climbing and crawling across it, like underneath, hand over hand, and then they're slowly lowered to the ground and then put into the hole. And there's like this whole like assembly line system of like, let's get these people out of here. So Rocket takes them off of like the line and puts them into the hole. Maurice guides them to the end of the hole with Nova, and then a bad ape is like, all right, I'm gonna babysit y'all. You all sit here. Meanwhile, the alarms start to blare as the monkeys are slowly escaping, and we start to see that the North has arrived, baby. Helicopters are coming in, and they're firing missiles at the military base, and the guards, they're running towards Woody Harrelson's like office, and they're like, why isn't he coming out? This is really weird. He asked for this. This is what he wanted. Wait, he's not helping. So all of the guards are kind of preoccupied at this time, so they're not really paying attention to the monkeys. So Caesar and
like Caesar established that he already knows. He's like, he even tells the colonel when they had the conversation, he's all like, this is not something you're gonna win. It's like no one's gonna come out of this, and honestly there's really no reason for you to come out alive, because apparently apparently these guys are much stronger than you. And holy, like you see this entire wave of soldiers coming in, and it just kind of like adds more to this sense of dread. It almost feels like a whole Armageddon. And like if it wasn't going to be the apes that are going to kill off the human race, it's going to be themselves, because they come in full force, and it just becomes very intense. Super, that war aspect comes back in here very, very heavily.
Oh yeah, you feel the war part of the movie again, and it's less so a war between the apes and the humans. It's between the humans and the humans.
Yeah.
And it's, like a regular war. While all this commotion is happening, Caesar's like, he sees that the office window or like balcony that Woody Harrelson kind of steps out to like give his little speeches and stuff is open. This is my opportunity. Takes Rocket's gun. He's like, I'm no better than Koba. I'm sorry. I gotta go do this. And he kind of scurries along, and he is like, I will meet you outside, my friend. Like, I have to go kill this guy. My vengeance is too strong. I have to avenge my family. And Rocket's like, all right, I guess. I'm gonna go. So Caesar heads on up, and he heads up to the colonel's room, and he slowly walks in. The lights are dim, and you still hear the guards banging and being like, where is he? Why isn't he opening and answering? And you hear bombs and explosions happening outside and everything. And Caesar makes his way over to the colonel, and he is kind of face down, and he has like a bottle of alcohol in his hand. You're like, oh, he's probably just drunk.
Right.
And you just see the blood dripping from his mouth, and he's making the sounds almost like a zombie.
Yeah.
And so you see he's been infected and he's lost his voice. And Caesar looks down and he sees the little doll that Nova gave to him. And so Nova has infected the colonel, and the colonel is reaching for his gun, and Caesar picks up the gun and he holds it to him, and he does he cock it? I think he does.
He does. He just kind of like Caesar, you can tell he's very hesitant. He's like pissed. He's like very much still on the idea that he's going to kill him. But yeah, the colonel helps him cock it and like puts it against his temple and whatnot. But that scene actually went on for a lot longer than I was expecting it to, for how tense it is.
Yeah.
I was like, holy like I've seen the movie, but I was like, oh
it's like, yeah, this is heavy. This is a lot for my monkey movie. So he cocks the gun, and Caesar has a moment where he feels like he could pull the trigger, but then he doesn't, and he puts the gun down and he starts to walk away. And then you see Woody Harrelson kind of reach for it, and you know what's going to happen. And you watch Caesar in this moment also has just tears in his eyes, and he's crying, and he's like, he's at the moment where he can receive his vengeance. He can take it. He could take this man's life who has ruined 2 years of his life and his whole clan, and all the mistakes can maybe not be resolved, but he can maybe feel, and he lets it go. And Woody Harrelson shoots himself and kills himself, because he's become the thing he's been fighting against this entire time. He's been infected over a mistake that he made by picking up this little toy that the Nova has infected. And so Caesar is like, all right, gotta get out of here now. So he hops onto a burning American flag and makes his way down to the ground, and he's making his way across the battlefield. Meanwhile, Bad Ape is like protecting the kids and stuff. And is,
right before he leaves, he actually sees a belt full of grenades, because he notices that there's a tank, like a gasoline tank, that's like starting to like fire out, I guess, is catching on fire. So he has like an idea. So he runs out with the grenade belt.
And Caesar knows the rules of video games. Big red flammable tank equals big explosion. So he's like, I can probably end this right now if I blow this up. And so he's on a mission to blow up the big red tanker with the grenades, and he is running across the battlefield. He's dodging, he's weaving. They're shooting at him. Well, not really shooting at him, because all of the soldiers are really focused on
the north,
the other incoming soldiers from the north, except for one guy who Caesar initially captured in the beginning of the movie, and you let him go, and you think that this guy is going to have this like change of heart. He's like, he's going to be a good guy, because Caesar's shown him mercy. Caesar was there and gave him a second chance. In the meeting with the colonel where he's talking about killing his own men, you kind of see this look of disgust on that soldier's face, like, oh, maybe like this guy's gonna turn. He's gonna aid.
They really kind of think he's gonna like side with Caesar. Even one small thing is like when the talk with the colonel, like there's a point where Caesar gets so pissed and he like attacks the colonel, and even the guy who just kind of pulls him back and calls him by name, he's like, Caesar, don't do this. Like the strong sense of sympathy with him. And yeah, I mean, eventually when he's running out, he shoots Caesar with an arrow.
Yeah, he shoots him in the side of and gets him in the side, and Caesar falls to the ground. And I was like, that's gotta hurt, because he doesn't rip it out, he just breaks it off, and I'm like,
yeah.
Ooh. But I guess leave it in for now, because that's keeping the blood intact there. And so he's injured. Meanwhile, on the top, the Donkey Kong, Red, the gorilla, he's helping out, and one of the soldiers is yelling for a grenade launcher. He's like, give me the grenade launcher. And Donkey Kong sees this happening to Caesar, and the guy's obviously not paying attention. And he's like, give me a grenade launcher, come on. And he kind of has a moment where he's watching this happening. And meanwhile, while that's happening, the guy who Caesar let go is becoming closer and closer to him, and holds up this crossbow to Caesar, and he's about to pull the trigger, and then he just explodes.
Yeah, dude. What you get, like,
I was like, oh
no, it's not a rated R movie, but you see this guy's helmet like go flying out of the sky. You're like, there's nothing left of this guy. But yeah, he's one of those, like, I think Red, or I guess we're calling him Donkey Kong. I feel like I like that name a little better.
Donkey Kong.
But Donkey
it's more
Kong,
fun to say.
Yeah, but Donkey Kong, he's such a very interesting character, because you establish that he like turned against Caesar and followed Koba and hates Caesar for killing Koba, and he's one of the most conflicted characters of this movie, definitely the most, because he's so tough, and he seems like not a character you can budge at all, but he has these conversations with Caesar where he's like, Caesar tells him, like, do you really think he's going to keep you alive after all this? And like, he kind of knows, but the whole progress to get to that moment, I think, is so well done. Eventually that moment where he's kind of redeemed himself and saved Caesar is kind of short-lived, because right after the guy who was trying to get the grenade launcher shoots him in the head, and damn.
Yeah, and he dies, but Caesar takes this moment, and he is like, okay. And he takes a grenade, and you see this monkey chuck a grenade, lands, and it explodes, and a big explosion happens as Caesar is running away. It kind of turns the tide of this battle, and it allows the North to kind of get the better of the base, because half of the base is now exploded. Caesar makes his way outside, and he's trying to get back to his people, and he's rushing, and you just kind of see these helicopters come, and I think they blow up the rest of the base anyway. So the apes got out just in time, because they would have been exploded as well. You see, like you were mentioning before, just the might of this army, just hundreds, like thousands of soldiers, all dressed in white camo, and there might be tanks too, like there's just tanks and helicopters, and they all start cheering, and Caesar's watching, and then one of the guards turns and looks at Caesar, and then you see all of the other soldiers turn and look at Caesar, and then one soldier slowly raises his gun, and he's about to fire on him, but then you just start hearing something rumbling in the background. And we mentioned before, this takes place in the snow. This is in a mountain. This is kind of not the top of the mountain, but it's about halfway up probably. When you make a giant explosion on a mountain that's covered in snow, that creates an avalanche. And so this avalanche starts coming. These people didn't factor this in.
They were
the
just
virus has gotten to them. Yeah, they were, and you just kind of see them all panic. They're faceless. They're all just like these goons, like in helmets and everything. So you don't know like what these people look like, or if they're scarred, or if they can talk or anything like that. But they all start panicking, and they start running away. They're like, all right, Caesar's the least of our problems. Actually, this monkey, whatever, this thing is coming. So Caesar's running to the woods and figures the only way to save himself is to be monkey. And he remembers to embrace the monkey. And he starts climbing up this tree, and the avalanche comes, and it starts knocking all the soldiers down, and it shakes the tree pretty hard, and Caesar's gripping on with all of his might and all of his life. And then the avalanche stops, and he looks around, and he sees amongst the trees his people. You see Rocket, you see Bad Ape, you see Maurice, you see Nova, you see Cornelius and Lake. The whole gang is here. And they let out this primal holler and scream. It's like they did it, they survived. And you look around, and the humans are all dead. This is the last of the humans that we see in this movie, and probably the last kind of stand.
They don't explore it on, but like, how many more humans are still left in the world? If this is really it, like, what a way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's kind of implied, or at least in this area, that it's like California, west coast of the United States. This is kind of it. Like, you saw a little bastion of people in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes in San Francisco. They didn't seem to come across too many others.
Right.
And if that military base was the one to, they might have had scientists or whatever. I mean, then that military base could still be there, but the humans are going to revert back anyway, because it's going to infect, the rest of the virus is going to infect everybody and make them return to their primal states and stop talking. So it's kind of, it doesn't matter. It's too late for humans at this. Woody Harrelson even says, he's like, if this virus gets out, we will be a Planet of Apes, and I wanted to applaud.
Yeah. He said the thing.
That's the movie. He's the only one to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think someone else says it in a previous movie, but not in this trilogy, but like in the previous Planet of the Apes films. Yeah. So Woody Harrelson claims it's going to be a Planet of the Apes, and it is. It is a Planet of the Apes at this point. The apes, they come down off the trees and they make their way over, and you see them go on this long journey. They make it to the desert, the promised land that Rocket and Blue Eyes were talking about earlier. And Caesar's like, my people are home. He sits down on a log as the apes kind of go, and they start exploring the new terrain that they can now start building their new lives on. Him and Maurice start to have a conversation, and they start talking about the future and everything, and you kind of see Caesar, his side is bleeding from the wound he received in the arrow that he was shot with, and Maurice gives this really heartfelt talk to Caesar.
For myself, who's just been revisiting the first and the second movie, I just saw it within a tight span of 2 weeks. It is very, very sad, a lot sadder than I remember feeling when I saw it the first time. And it's also, again, just that biblical aspect coming back. It's like Moses, like at the end, Maurice just tells him, don't worry, we'll tell everybody your story. We'll tell your son what you did.
Your son's gonna know what you've done for us, and apes will know for generations. And Caesar closes his eyes and he falls over, and
it's almost, it is, again, just going back to that biblical aspect. Like the last shot of Caesar when he's like laying down, it almost seems like, I guess, pieces of art that show these biblical imagery. Just the lighting and the colors.
Yeah. You think that's intentional?
No, not at all. It was an accident. Maybe ask him, we're like, we didn't think about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
it was all a coincidence.
Yeah, all a coincidence,
And then the camera, after Caesar dies, you kind of see Rocket and Lake. They're the first two that like notice. They spin around, they start going over, and all the apes kind of see that Caesar has died. And then the camera pans up to space, kind of hinting at like, hey, we did it. We're finally at Planet of the Apes. Maybe we'll do the next one next time.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do it. No. Turns out no. Well, I don't know, but almost certainly not. I don't think Kingdom is going to be a direct remake of Planet of the Apes, the original one. And that's our trilogy. It ends on just a bummer of a note, but it's kind of bittersweet because it is the end of Caesar's story, but the apes do get to be free, and they do get to, it is a good place to end the trilogy.
Yeah.
I know for that scene in particular, Matt Reeves was like, there was not a dry eye in the house. Like that performance from both Andy Serkis and Karen Conville, who played Maurice, was so emotional, and they played it so well. Also, that scene was supposed to be done in sign language. Like that was originally written in the script as Maurice signing to Caesar, but they felt like it would be more impactful if Maurice like actually spoke. Maurice speaks a little bit, a few words here and there throughout the whole trilogy, but this is the first time Maurice speaks like sentences, and they're like, this would be a lot more emotional. And on the day they decided that, they were like, what if we tried it where you talked? And it just hits a lot harder. Speaking of like emotion, the scene, let's go back for a moment, the scene where Caesar confronts the colonel as he's been turned, and you see the tears in his eyes I was talking about before. That is Andy Serkis really crying. I don't know how they do this, but apparently like on the set on that day, like he was giving real tears. Obviously you can't put dots on water and motion capture tears, and they like tried to like recreate it with CGI, and they couldn't. So then they like took his face, and then like in that scene that's like really Andy Serkis's face on Caesar's body, and then they like CGI like over top
the actual the mask,
the Caesar, like the mask of Caesar on top. But that's really him. Like those are his real eyes. That's not
crazy.
Like, I know. I saw that. I was like, that seems impossible and really hard to do.
Man.
But like they were like, his performance is so good. Yeah. What were you gonna say about Andy Serkis?
Dude, he's been robbed. It's just, this is an example. I mean, you could go back to him in Gollum and Lord of the Rings, or just here in this. Like he wasn't. Not to say the an Oscar is like the definitive way to acknowledge his good work, but you can't rule that out and say that he didn't give one of the best performances of that year just because
I mean
a layer over him.
I remember the Oscar talk, the predictions. They were like, Andy Serkis deserves a nomination at the very least. We could talk Oscars now. Let's talk Oscars and how this movie was robbed of a Best Picture nomination. It was not robbed of a Best Actor nomination. It was robbed, and I talked about this last week with Dawn, which I believe should have been nominated in all those categories as well. My brother was even surprised. He was like, Andy Serkis was nominated for this, right? And I was like, no, like he wasn't. That was a tough year. That was the year of Birdman. And so like that was tough. But this year, 2018, Best Visual Effects Oscar. Let me pull up the notes. Last time I was dunking on Hugo, but turns out Hugo was for for Rise. So this year, okay, big year for Best Visual Effects. So War of the Planet of the Apes was one of the visual effects nominated. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Kong Skull Island, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then the winner, Blade Runner 2049. And I was like, yeah, kind of, I guess. That's a tough one.
Not mad. Yeah, I'm not mad.
But Best Actor this year, let's see, we had Gary Oldman for The Darkest Hour, where he played Winston Churchill.
He won, right?
Timothy Chalamet, Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis, Phantom Thread, Daniel Kaluuya, Get Out, and Denzel Washington, Roman J. Israel Esquire. Yeah, if I had to cut one of these, I got to cut Timmy. Get Timmy out of here.
Yeah,
Put Andy Serkis in. I haven't seen Roman J. Israel Esquire. I mean, I love Denzel, but even Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, he's fine. Or Gary Oldman, also fine.
Gary Oldman would have gotten another Oscar at some other point. He would have been fine this year not giving it to him for The Darkest Hour, but because
that was the Oscar where they were like, sorry, we forgot.
True, but the same could have been said for Andy Serkis at this point too. So
what was the best picture? Shape of Water, Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now, if I had to take one of those out, I'd probably kick out The Post.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Yes.
Fine movie. Yes. But also, do you remember The Post? But also, do you remember War for the Planet of the Apes? Because I feel like this is a slept-on movie. People don't talk about this.
I think it just comes back to, like, you can't just... I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone in the right mind would ever want to see this movie by itself without having seen the other two, but I don't think you can revisit this one by itself without feeling the impact of the second one. Like, you just can't.
It's not fun,
no,
I will say. And like this and Dawn, fantastic movies, and I hadn't really rewatched them, and I remember loving these movies, and they are great, but they are just bummers.
Yeah,
I've seen Rise like 10 times, maybe because it's always on FX, but like there's like a lightness to Rise, I would say. There's like I don't know what it is, it's of that era of just like it just feels a little bit lighter, and it's just like, oh, this is like a fun, silly little movie, even though there's some dark things in there. But once you get into the Matt Reeves 2 movies, it's just like, oh, I feel bad about myself.
They don't have like you seeing them riding horses for the first time, climbing up the Golden State Bridge, or throwing like spears and manhole covers at cops. You don't get that in the other ones.
No, like the action sequences in that are like you're saying, like that's kind of fun, and like, you know, no one's really kind of hurt. But this is just like, oh yeah, these are like character studies and full on dramas, and the acting, everyone involved. We called out Steve Zahn, and Woody Harrelson did a great job, even though he doesn't like his performance in this movie. I read a thing where he did an interview where he was like, if I was to go back and like fix a movie, like my performance, it would be Planet of the Apes, because I got so intimidated by all the technology that I just kind of went on autopilot and just like I just did Woody Harrelson. And he was like, if I did it now, I would do something different and I wouldn't just be Woody Harrelson. But I think he gives a great performance in this movie.
Dude, that's a wild take. No, he's pretty scary in this movie. And obviously his character isn't the main focus of everything that you're watching. He's not like the one that's going to stand out the most, but he is scary and he does a really good job. And one weird thing that's added to his character that bothered me a little bit is that he wears sunglasses at night. Just to show you how much of a madman he is. I'm not sure if that's how telling that is, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you'd be able to see that well with sunglasses at night, dude. Well,
I didn't like that he would shave his head in front of his soldiers.
And that he doesn't finish. He just kind of like just sits there, like half of his head is filled with like.
He does half. Yeah, and he's just like, my people. Well, you know, he's a cult leader in this movie. Alpha and Omega. Let me get into some fun facts here. Alpha and Omega is a reference to Beneath the Planet of the Apes, where there is a bomb that a nuclear warhead that's underneath that is worshipped by these tunnel people. It's a weird movie.
Yeah, this is new to me. Okay,
but they made it a little bit more realistic, the Alpha and Omega group in this one. Yeah. It's kind of noted that this is like a loose gross adaptation of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Not at all. That movie is so weird. Well, I'll talk about it another time. But like that, it's a strange film. Yeah, so there's that. Steve Zahn makes a human appearance in this movie, although you don't actually see him. He's not in the motion capture suit when you see Bat Ape from behind when he's wearing that jacket. So during that entire chase sequence and he's like inspecting the gun and everything, that's really Steve Zahn, like without a motion capture suit. That's just him just in a jacket.
Oh, sure.
So, and then this I thought was a fun piece of just entertainment, news and trivia and whatever. This is the last film to be released by 20th Century Fox. Rest in peace. This was the last movie released before Disney bought.
Not a bad way to end it. I mean, it didn't get really recognized, but sure.
Yeah, and I was like, what a movie to go out on.
What a bummer.
Oh, you're probably wondering, you're like, hey, remember Jason Clarke from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? I wonder what happened to that guy.
Yeah.
Well, I have bad news. There's a deleted scene, and Matt Reeves has confirmed it, that Woody Harrelson's character did kill him.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm assuming his whole family is dead as well. Apparently, Jason Clarke's character, I forgot his name, Marcus or something like that. He apparently was captured by Woody Harrelson's group of people. He's brought in front of him, and he tries to convince him that like Caesar's like okay and like good, and Woody Harrelson just executes him. That is the canon, straight from the words of Matt Reeves, and I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah.
After all the work he did in that movie just to be executed off screen. They love doing that. They love killing the main human character of the previous movie off screen.
There you go. Look, I was gonna say, like James Franco, it's just no explanation really how he died. I mean, like he just like anybody else got sick, I'm assuming, and that's it. You know?
Yeah, just probably died. And, but it just kind of speaks to like these movies, they don't need an overarching human protagonist because you have Andy Serkis. I think it's funny watching these movies, looking at the credits. In Dawn and this movie, Andy Serkis gets top billing, but in Rise, he's like third or fourth billed, which is kind of crazy because he is Caesar. But at the time, I don't think anyone really realized that like this was gonna be a thing. It's like, oh, we're rebooting Planet of the Apes.
It even ends off like if you just did Rise of the Planet of the Apes and not the other sequels, like it is still a pretty good by itself, a precursor just to the original movie. So you can just kind of fill in the blanks later on. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts about this, and just kind of shows you like the level of care they go into it, is this is the first time in the 3 movies that they do something. I love when movie studios do like a little tie-in with their company intros. Like when you hear the Fox fanfare is throughout, the regular Fox fanfare is in Rise and Dawn, but here they actually, it kind of sounds like you're in the jungle or like in the forest, and they use kind of like very basic instruments that I thought was really fun. It's
just drums and horns. And I read this, they took out they recorded it without the strings to symbolize the ape culture and remove the humanity. Well, I don't know why strings are humanity, but I guess apes are more likely to play a drum or a horn than they would violin or harp or something. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Why don't people give this movie its flowers? Why don't people give this franchise its flowers? I'll say it. This is rewatching these 3 movies. I don't know, except maybe like Toy Story, like another like 3 films that are just so good and knock it out of the park. Every single one of these movies is enjoyable. We'll just jump to this part right now. This is a monkey see, monkey do. Like, please, if for some reason you've stuck through us ranting about this movie and all the spoilers, please watch this movie. It needs to. I think it needs to be. I don't know if it's an important movie, but like it's such a good movie, and like all of these are just really good movies. I don't know how you feel. Is this a monkey see, monkey do for you? I feel like it might.
This is definitely a monkey see, monkey do for me, and I just now having just fully finished the trilogy, I think this might be personally my favorite out of the 3. It's hard.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say like, yeah, you should go watch this movie without fully investing your time in all the other 2 movies before it. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is still pretty much underrated just because I think the titles alone draw people a little bit away. It's like such a long title. It's investing so much into it. You know what I mean? Yeah, man, I think this movie needs to get a lot of credit, and I'm personally very excited just for the new one to come out because it's surprised me just how much it still holds up and still is consistently good regardless of the premise. It's not a superhero movie. It's not a heavy action movie. It takes its time. It cares.
They're slow burns.
They're
not
very
exactly
does. Yeah, and it's like I was thinking about it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure at any given moment there might have been some executive who would have been like, "Dude, cut this. This is too long." Especially with this movie, there's moments where, when Maurice sees Nova, it's a very long scene where all they're doing is just staring at each other, and they're just kind of like wondering, who is this person? Who is this ape? But I was like, you could have cut this short, and it still would have been okay. But they really, really take their time, and they really care about the characters and the story. That I think it's one of the most rewarding franchises in a long time.
I have a theory.
Yeah, go for it.
I have a theory as why this movie is able to exist in the way it does.
Okay.
Theory number one is that, well, Matt Reeves at this time, he wasn't super like big shot director. I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes really gave him that like blank check to be like, I mean, I think this movie actually gave him the blank check to be like, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Like you have proven yourself. Because he did Cloverfield, and then I think he did this, or he did these movies. And like Cloverfield's fine. It's a good movie, but like this is miles ahead of Cloverfield. But I think what happened is that like in this franchise in general is just forgotten. They keep making them. They do well. They make a lot of money, or they make decent amounts of money, and they cost a lot, but the return is always higher.
Right.
And I think that Fox at the time, this is during the superhero boom. Avengers kicked off. This is the year Guardians of the Galaxy 2 came out, and Wonder Woman, and Fox has the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Deadpool. And I think their executives are probably more focused on, at the time, on those movies, and we're like, okay, let's nitpick those, because after that, after Days of Future Past came out, like you had X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix and the Fantastic Four movie with Josh Trank, and all not the strongest films, I would say. Mm-hmm. So I think that the executives, they're like, let's focus on the superhero movies. And I think this and Dawn, they're just left on the back burner. They're like, oh yeah, we have the Planet of the Apes things. We're not going to worry so much about that one, because the superhero movies, that's where the money is. And so that's my thought, is like this was left alone because X-Men existed. I'll say it. I don't know how true that is. That is a complete fabrication made up by me, but that to me makes the most sense, because the executives would want to focus on their bigger franchise that has made X amount of millions and billions of dollars. But also at this time as well, I'll give Fox credit for, they were trying different things. Like they made Logan. After Deadpool, they were like, oh, adult stories can be told in these different genres. And yeah, this movie's not rated R, but it could have been. Yeah. I don't know if it would have made as much money, but like it could have been, because this, like we said, you're not taking your kids to see this. A kid is gonna fall asleep watching this. This isn't fun for them. I mean, like even the original Planet of the Apes, kids watched it growing up. My dad loves that movie, and my mom loves that movie, and it's something that they grew up with. But you watch that film, and it's not really for children. It's not, just because it has monkeys.
It's also a slow burn. Yeah, it's just they take their time.
70s were built differently. Well, anyway, I'll kind of skip it because we kind of discussed each of the monkeys as we were going through the plot, and this is getting a little long. I mean, is there any monkey for you that particularly stood out, or like is the MVP of this movie?
I mean, aside from Maurice, I think for me, it's got to be Bad Ape, just hands down. I know we touched on it a little bit, but like just to emphasize, I think Bad Ape is one of those characters that, yes, he's the first character in this franchise, in this rebooted franchise, to be a comic relief. And of course, you needed him because this is a very heavier movie than the last two. And he has some really funny moments, just kind of being innocent. He's not annoying or not as like scared for the sake of being scared. And there are moments where you kind of like touch on that a little bit, especially when he's like, no, I don't want to do any of this. And Maurice kind of like yells at him. But I think it's really great because it just shows you just how adaptable the movies can be. You're not just limited to the concept alone, and you can just put in a character like Bad Ape. And I don't know, I think even then it just kind of adds more of a better case for actors to come in and portray these creatures, these characters, and validate them and say they are giving a great performance just like any other actor who has screen time. It's not an animated movie at all. And Steve Zahn came in and really was the MVP because he steals the show several times through his comedy and just through what he does as a character. Even just stands toe to toe with Caesar being like a polar opposite and just being an innocent, naive ape. But he's the MVP for sure.
I just thought of something, and I'm sure actors do this all the time. Motion capture sure. And yes, like, you know, there is computer generated imagery put on top of them. I want to defend motion capture artists, and I'm sure they advocate for themselves all the time.
Right.
Andy Serkis and Terry Notary and Toby Kebbell and Judy Greer and Steve Zahn and all of these people that are in this movie and all the other motion capture artists. I think people like the Academy or other artists elsewhere, or let's look at even at Marvel movies, you know, Sean Gunn with Rocket Raccoon, or Josh Brolin Thanos, or Bill Nighy in the Pirates movies. They are wearing funny little pajama suits. Like, but how is that any different than Gary Oldman putting on a fat suit and putting on a fake prosthetic nose and winning an Oscar for playing Winston Churchill?
No, that's at its core. That's the best argument you can make. It just doesn't make any sense.
Like, it's just a costume. They're just wearing a costume. It's digitally enhanced. I'm sorry, I just got really mad.
No, you're already three movies in, and you're like improving the technology. You're doing so much to make sure these performances stand out so well, and you're still out here saying that that's not them. It's all animated. It's like, homie, like what are we doing?
There's a difference between this and The Lion King.
Oh God.
That is a CGI animated film, and this is a performance.
Yes. It's just, oh man, I'm so pissed off I paid money to go see The Lion King, and then Mufasa coming out. With Mufasa coming out, it's just...
Hey, I will be talking about those movies on the podcast. They got monkeys in them. I want to shout out, I think Rocket is kind of the secret MVP of this movie. Underneath, he is one of three characters that carries over from, like, Caesar, Maurice, and Rocket are these three kind of core, and Koba as well. Koba appears. Right. Love Toby Kebbell, love Koba. Koba's a fantastic character, but this wasn't Koba's movie. I think Rocket finally gets a chance to, like, he has kind of the second best arc in this franchise. Mm-hmm. Because he starts out as a villain, and then he kind of becomes subservient, and he doesn't do much in the second movie. And then in the third movie here, like, he kind of becomes a leader and embraces his role as Caesar's right hand, like, lieutenant. When here, I'll ask this question: Caesar dies. Who do you think picks up the mantle and leads? Do you think it is Rocket? Do you think it's Maurice? Do you think Lake? I don't think Lake.
No, I don't think Lake would either. Even though she establishes herself as somebody who does make really strong and really quick, fast decisions, saving Caesar's life and being like, everybody get to work, you know. I think Rocket would be the person to make all the shots. Maurice, I think, would not run the show.
I don't think Maurice cares.
Yeah, no, he just cares. He's just there to kind of be like, I almost wanted to say like a eunuch in like Game of Thrones. He's just there to watch everything. Like,
I will teach.
Yeah, teach.
I will talk. I will spread peace. Yeah. But I think Rocket is going to be the Bad Ape's not going to lead.
No.
But
he's gonna be on the council somehow. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Rocket is also, he's a quiet MVP because he doesn't show up a lot. He's not like prominent in any dialogue, but yeah, he has a really great arc.
And he throws poop.
Yeah, he throws poop. That alone, that's the only best criteria for this.
And that makes him the best monkey in this movie because he does the most monkey thing. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I agree with you. No, but for this, just come back. It's just like Rocket really, you know, he could easily have been just a player in the whole prison escape, but, you know, he's bold enough to, like, when Nova is in the prison, like, is in the encampment, and he saves her life. He says, I know what to do. Doesn't even think twice about it. He shows up and gets his ass kicked just to get inside that prison, not only for Caesar's sake, but to save Nova, and it's a very bold, heroic choice for a character that doesn't get enough screen time to do any of that, or hasn't had the most screen time to really get to know since the first and second one. So yeah, no, I agree with you.
I'll say Rocket is the Neville Longbottom of this franchise.
Yes,
because he's almost, you know, he's not quite the same as Caesar. They came from the same place. Yes, Caesar was the leader there, but Rocket also lost a child, and Rocket's gone through pretty much the same arc Caesar has, just he wasn't strong enough at the time to lead the people, and Caesar obviously is the stronger choice, but he's learned throughout these movies to embrace and become that leader, and you know what, Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Pokemon.
Blasting up again.
Which ties into the rocket ship Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
All right, I want to ask. So, what is the movie we have if we were to remove the monkeys and the apes from this movie? What is left over? What is the short story?
I mean, I was gonna say it would end up being like a Last of Us situation, but of course, you're removing the monkeys when the simian flu is also a big aspect of that. So can we assume the flu is not necessarily simian flu, the flu is there? I guess.
So we're just looking at this movie alone,
right?
Because I figure like there has to have been, we had to get to this point in some capacity.
Sure.
Hypothetically, let's just say these 2 years pass. Somehow all the apes died. So all the apes are dead. There's no more apes. Apes are extinct, but we still have the simian flu. So I would say this movie, the simian flu reverts people back to their primitive states.
Mm-hmm.
We still have Woody Harrelson and the North. They have their attack on each other. The avalanche still happens. Everyone dies still. We're still at the same point.
It's the whole movie except everyone's a dick. You don't care, right?
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to think. I guess Nova and her dad still live.
That is true, but I feel like they probably would have been because so her and her dad they're still with Alpha Omega, right? Or did they run away?
They ran away because they find them in their own little camp. And Woody Harrelson says that when he's talking to Caesar, he says that some of his men who had children, they ran away, and that maybe they would have been found by Woody Harrelson's men. But let's just say they live on their happy little camp by themselves. And Woody Harrelson's Alpha Omega group and the North, as we call them, they wipe each other out. Yeah, and then humans are primitive and they can't speak to each other anymore. And we have, in a way, humans are like apes, and if they're becoming primitive, we still have a planet of apes.
A planet of the apes.
So nothing changes, and the movie is exactly the same. All right. Well, I want to ask you: do you like monkeys?
Yeah, more so now.
Yeah, more so now. Wow, this movie has turned you into a monkey liker.
An ape stan.
An ape stan. This podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming out next week. The hat trick is almost complete of Godzilla, Kong, Monkey Man, and now
we're gonna get a shortage of monkey movies. I'm not sure.
Yeah, then I have to watch older films. Ridiculous. I have to wait till potentially Kraven the Hunter. For a movie in theaters with a monkey.
There needs to be one second unit shot of like a monkey in the jungle or something.
I can't confirm it, but I have a sneaking suspicion. Let me close out the show here. I want to thank you, Juan, for coming on and discussing this with me. We had a much... I thought this was going to be kind of a shorter one because, as I mentioned to you before the show, I got so sucked into watching this movie that I just didn't take notes. And I was like, oh no, but I want to thank you for joining me and having this conversation and kind of being someone, jumping in short notice to do this. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to thank Elias for our logo. I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. This is probably going to be a longer one. Something about those Ramon boys. We have long, deep conversations about the movies we talk about. It's so funny bringing a different guest on every week and just the different vibes. And there's something about you, when I talk to you and David, I just get really invested into the particular movie and we just have like long film boy conversations. So I apologize for those at home for being like, you didn't make any jokes this week. I was I'm sorry.
This movie was did not really would allow us to get any jokes. It's sad. It's so sad.
No, yeah, this and Dawn, I was like, there's not many jokes to mine from this, and it's too good a movie to make fun of. So
exactly.
If you want to support the show in some capacity, I have an Amazon affiliate link in the description. If you want to buy the Planet of the Apes box set on Amazon and you use that link, I get a kickback of that somehow. I don't know how that particularly works, but I get some of your money in my pocket, and you don't have to do anything. You're just going to buy something you already were going to buy anyway. If you want to give us a 5-star review on your podcaster of choice, I would appreciate that. It just helps boost the algorithm. All right, Juan, do you have any way you want to close out the show? Any idea on what our sign off should be this week?
Apes together strong. Apes together strong.
All right, thank you, and bye.
Bye.